to Genesis, the 32nd chapter. And we're going to begin at the 22nd verse. Y'all stay close. I don't know how we're going to flow today. We're just going to go with God. Genesis, the 32nd chapter. And reading at the 22nd verse. Before we begin reading, if you can close your eyes, put your hand on your heart, and say, I need this word. Say, I need this word. This word is going to set me up for what God is getting ready to do in 24. We're going to begin reading at the 22nd verse, and I'm going to read along with you on the monitors, if you would direct your attention. It says, that night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. Now, I want to highlight the meaning of Jabbok here. It's a stream or a river, you might refer to it, that was next to the place where Jacob was located. But the meaning of Jabbok means a pouring out. It means an emptying out, all right? Verse number 23, it says, after he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. 24. So Jacob was left, somebody say alone. And a man wrestled, somebody say wrestled. A man wrestled with him till daybreak. Verse 25. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. But Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you, somebody say, bless me. Unless you bless me. Next verse. The man asked him, what is your name, Jacob? He answered. Next verse. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Somebody say overcome. Next verse. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. I'll say it one more time. It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. Let's go back to verse number 28, where we'll kind of focus in for our topic, where it says, then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Before you take your seats, can you just find somebody and make contact with and help share my subject for this morning, and say, neighbor, hello, my name is a new name. Find somebody else. Look at somebody across the room and say, neighbor, hello, my name is a new name. You may have your seats in the presence of the Lord. My name is a new name. My name is a new name. So we're going to get right in it and do a little work, but I believe that God has something predestined for all of us before we exit out of the sanctuary doors, what currently is this morning. But let's give you a little bit of an overview of the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis has sometimes been called the seed plot. It's sometimes been called the seed plot of the entire Bible. Most of the major doctrines in the Bible are introduced in seed form in the book of Genesis. Okay? Most of the major doctrines in the Bible are introduced in seed form in the book of Genesis. Along with the fall of man, God's promise of salvation or redemption is recorded in Genesis 3:15. The doctrines of creation, imputation of sin, justification, atonement, depravity, wrath, grace, sovereignty, responsibility, and many more are all addressed in this book of origins called Genesis. Okay? All of this is addressed in this book of origins called Genesis. Many of the great questions of life are answered in Genesis. Okay? Many of the great questions of life are answered in Genesis, such as, where did I come from? God created us. That's Genesis 1:1. Number 2, why am I here? We are here to have a relationship with God. That's Genesis 15:6. Number 3, where am I going? We have a destination after death, which is addressed in Genesis 25:8. Genesis appeals to the scientist, the historian, the theologian, the housewife, the farmer, the traveler, and the man or woman of God. It is a fitting beginning for God's story of his plan for mankind, the Bible. The book of Genesis can be divided into 2 sections: primitive history and patriarchal history. Okay? Primitive history and patriarchal history. Primitive history records creation, again, Genesis chapter 1 and 2. It's the fall of man, Genesis chapters 3-5. It's the flood, Genesis chapters 6-9. And the dispersion, Genesis chapters 10-11. Now, the patriarchal history records the lives of 4 great men: Abraham, which is Genesis 12-25:8; Isaac, which is Genesis 21, 1:35-29. Number 3, Jacob, which we'll touch on a little bit later, which is Genesis 25 through Genesis 50-14. And number 4, Joseph, Genesis 30, 22-50-26. These are the lives of 4 great men that reference the patriarchal history in the book of Genesis. God created a universe that was good and free from sin. God created humanity to have a personal relationship with him. God created humanity to have a personal relationship with him. Adam and Eve sinned and thereby brought evil and death into the world. Evil increased steadily in the world until there was only one family in which God found anything good. God sent the flood to wipe out evil. Hear what I'm saying? God sent the flood to wipe out evil, but delivered Noah and his family along with the animals in the ark. After the flood, humanity began again to multiply and spread throughout the world. I said after the flood, humanity began again and to multiply and to spread throughout the world. God chose Abraham through whom he would create a chosen people, and eventually the promised Messiah. The chosen line was passed on to Abraham's son Isaac, and then to Isaac's son Jacob. God changed Jacob's name to Israel, and his 12 sons became the ancestors of the 12 tribes of Israel. In his sovereignty, God had Jacob's son Joseph sent to Egypt by the despicable actions of Joseph's brothers. This act intended for evil by the brothers was intended for good by God, and eventually resulted in Jacob and his family being saved from a devastating famine by Joseph, who had risen to great power in Egypt. All right? And now the overriding theme of Genesis is God's eternal existence and his creation of the world. There is no effort on the part of the author to defend the existence of God. He simply states that God is. I said he simply states that God is, always was, and always will be almighty over all. I'll say it again because some of you are a little slow to catch it. He simply states that God is, always was, and always will be almighty over all. In the same way we have confidence in the truths of Genesis, despite the claims of those who would deny them, all people, regardless of culture, nationality, or language, are accountable to the Creator. But because of sin introduced into the world at the fall, we are separated from him. But through one small nation, Israel, God's redemptive plan for mankind was revealed and made available to all, and we rejoice in that plan. God created the universe, the earth, and every living being. We can trust him to handle the concerns in our lives. God can take a hopeless situation, reference Abraham and Sarah being childless, and do amazing things if we simply, somebody say trust and obey. Say trust and obey. I'll say it one more time because y'all, when we get to obey, y'all, trust and obey. I know we don't like to use that word obey, but I heard y'all. I said, say it a couple times. Y'all said trust and obey. Trust and obey. Say it with your chest. Terrible and unjust things may happen in our lives, as with Joseph, but God will always bring about a greater good if we have faith in him and his sovereign plan. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to, somebody say, his purpose. Small reference, we are people of purpose. So as I begin to prepare for my assignment this week, I begin to seek the Lord around what to say this week. Knowing all the happenings of this week and knowing the transition and knowing what we were preparing to unveil to you all, even if you didn't know it until Friday evening, I said, Lord, what would you have for me to say? What would you have for us to say? We're going to have good church this week. It's a history-making week. It's monumental. But what people are coming to hear, either last instructions or last words before we cross over into the year of 20 and 24. And I said, God, what would you have for us to say? And if you've been around here over the last few days, then you know that we've transitioned from the old and we've shifted into the new. So he said, Jarrell, what I need you to stand and say, I need you to make a reintroduction and to say, hello, my name is a new name. Now, I don't really mean to sub or to be impartial or no pun to be intended, but this is the first Sunday that we exist with a new name. I said this is the first Sunday that we exist with a new name. We are formerly Heaven Bound Deliverance Center. We are now People of Purpose Family Worship Center. But I wanted you, we say oftentimes that it starts at the head and it flows down. So what the Lord told me is not only is the church transitioning into a different season and to a new name, but I need to extend this word to every individual that your old name is referenced for your old season. But I'm getting ready to give you a new name in a new season. Getting ready to give you a new name in a new season. And so I said, okay, God, well, you know we have a new name. And the reason that I want to reference it as a new name as we start here, because I can't tell you all you've had to go through in the old season. I can't tell you all you've had to battle in an old season. We can just call it an old name. But if we be honest, a new name can signify so many new things or different things. But let me stop right here, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself. I don't want you to just look at 24 as you're transitioning in just another new year. But we are transitioning into a new dispensation. We are transitioning into a new season. We are transitioning into a new level, into a new area. If you calculate, and I think I referenced this before, 2023, if you add it up individually, equates to the number 7. which is completion. That means that we have completed a particular season in our life, and I'll deal with this later, but as we shift into 20 and 24, we are literally shifting into a new beginning. So as God would have it, we would shift and change the name of the church. As God would have it, we would shift and change so many things. As God would have it, we would shift and transition. And as you see some of the things, you see the lighting, you see the wall, and you see this wall, and you see the logo, and so many other things. What God told me to tell you, it literally just hit my spirit. What God told me to tell you is in 23, I was taking you through an element of a remodel. 20 and 23 was a year of a remodel, and everything that happened prior to, even the last 7 years prior to 23 was a remodel. It was a reconstruction. That's why the initiation of restoration started in 23, so that you can get to a certain level before he transitions you into a new beginning in 24. What God is saying is, I had to deconstruct some things in 23. I had to demolish some things in 23, but it was a preparation and a setup for what I'm trying to get you to. Somebody say, in the next shift. In the next shift. All right, so I don't have a full 3 points, if I'm honest, but there's two areas, there's 2 points that I need to just kind of camp, and I want you all to be transparent. Even if you're not transparent openly, be transparent with your heart, because the first thing that he told me I needed to deal with is the wrestle. I knew it would get quiet. He said, Jarrell, I need you to address the wrestle or the wrestling. And wrestle by definition means to contend by grappling with and striving to trip or to throw an opponent down or off balance. Okay? It's to combat an opposing tendency or force. Hear what I'm saying? It's to combat an opposing tendency or force. It means to engage in deep thought, consideration, or debate. Okay? To engage in deep thought, consideration, or debate. That's more so referencing wrestling in your mind. It also means to engage in or as if in a violent or determined way. It also means to try to solve a difficult problem or make a difficult decision. Okay? Ooh, it's quiet. It means to try to solve a difficult problem or make a difficult decision. Now, that's the technical definition. Let me give you the biblical definition or explanation. To wrestle, it means to struggle in your prayers and persevere. I said it means to struggle in your prayers and persevere. Now, I don't want to put anybody on blast, but if it just applies to you, you don't got to raise your hand. Just go. If everybody lift their hands, nobody will know it's you. How many have struggled in prayer points this year and say, God, I'm asking, what's going on? I need some help, and I really don't know, and I need you to help me because I don't know how we're here. I don't know how things landed here. And what you don't realize is it was a wrestling. You were struggling in your prayers really because you're praying about some things that you don't see, but still you're trying to persevere to get to the place that you know he promised you. And you're saying, this don't look like what you told me, so I'm trying to understand what's happening. And I don't mean any disrespect, but the truth of the matter is this. We were contending and grappling with God, trying to figure out what is happening. And sometimes wrestling with God is about going back repeatedly in prayer over something that is confusing us, that he has said or that is happening in our lives. Sometimes the wrestling looks a bit like negotiating. I said sometimes the wrestling looks a bit like negotiating, and if we're honest, over the course of the last 365 days, we've wrestled with some things. We're needing to know which way to go. We're needing to go which way to turn. We're needing to know what to choose. We're needing to know who we should be in connection with. We're needing to know what his will is for our lives. And the Lord sent me to tell you on the 365th day that all your wrestling was worth it. I said, he told me to tell you on the 365th day that all of your wrestling was worth it, was worth it. Okay, let's go to Genesis, let's go to Genesis 32:22, excuse me. Let's go to Genesis 32:22, because I want you to see that I'm not making any of this up. I'm not making any of this up. Okay, it says, that night, Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and they crossed the ford of Jabbok. Okay, now it names these things by name. Okay, but I'm going to generalize this. Basically, what Jacob did, Jacob got up and took all his stuff and sent it over. Okay, some of y'all gonna catch it in a minute. Jacob got up and took all of his possessions. He took everything. The wives speak to relationship. The 2 female servants also speak to resources, but things that he possessed. And then the 11 sons, it speaks to what he produces. So he took relationships, he took to what was in his hands, and took what he produced, and all sent it in the ford of Jabbok. Now, I need you to reference this. We're working early. Jabbok, I told you when we were reading the scripture, means an emptying out. It means a pouring out. So what this verse is really saying is Jacob took everything he had and he emptied it out. Jacob took everything he had and he poured it out. What am I saying? I know you might not raise your hand, but 23 has thrown us some things to the point where we had to throw everything we had and empty it out. And we were at a place of pouring out saying, this is all I got. And God says, that's what I wanted. I wanted all you got. So we're at the place now, again, where Jacob, and we'll reference this in a minute, but the meaning of Jacob means a heel grabber. Jacob was a twin of his brother Esau. So he was the youngest. And if you read and do study biblically, and I might be ahead of myself, but we're going to bring it all together. If you do study biblically, what the firstborn had access to the birthright of the father. So what happened is that Jacob was spending his entire life trying to deceive Esau to get the birthright, which was the blessing that was entitled to Esau. But Esau was so focused on material things that they had a transaction in Jacob. He was a master deceiver. Jacob deceived Esau and was able to get the birthright for some food. Esau wanted to eat, and he just said, I want to eat, so here's my birthright if you give me this food. Think about that. You would transition or give up your entire birthright, your legacy, for a meal. Okay? How does that add up? All right, let's go to verse number 23. Let's go to verse 23. It says, after he had sent them across the stream, so he sent everything ahead, sent over all his possessions. And then let's go to verse 24. It says, so Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Now, this might get a little sticky, but I don't want to say we're going to breeze through it. We're going to work our way through it together. If you sent everything ahead and you gave all your possessions and everything that God gave you, and you sent it ahead, and if you cast it out and you poured it out and you emptied it out, now you're just left, somebody say, alone. And what I really want to highlight is that many of us, if we're transparent, myself included, we have felt alone in some spaces in 23. And as we're privately and sometimes even in a group of people feeling alone, our prayers have been, this is some of the wrestling, God, why here? Why now? Why this? Why here? Why now? Why this? And I've given up all my possessions. I've given up all my possessions, and now I'm here alone. What do you expect me to do now that I have nothing? And Jacob alone in basically in prayer time wrestled. Because here's the revelation. Sometimes you got to let everything go ahead of you to get that intimate time with him so that you can wrestle. Because certain things aren't going to come in a crowd of people or in a crowd of possessions. Some things you need to wrestle with alone. So he wrestled, and I'm paraphrasing, all night until daybreak. So he wrestled until the sun came up. He prayed all night until the sun came up. And just to give completely accurate context to the word, what really happened is, again, Jacob being master deceiver, Jacob was on his way to meet Esau because he had come from Laban. He had come from working for an uncle who had deceived him. He was supposed to work for 7 years to get one wife, and then the uncle deceived him and gave him the daughter that he didn't want. Then he got an extra 7 years of work after. So he had a total of 14 years of work because he was trying to get the thing that was promised to him. So now he's on his way. The Lord spoke to him. Now he's on his way back to meet Esau. But what he's doing is he's sending gifts and things ahead to Esau because what he's trying to do is he's trying to soften the heart of his brother. Because I told you, he's a master deceiver. He took his birthright. So now he's on his way back, and he says he has so much access and he has so many servants, I don't want him to kill me. Okay? I don't want him to kill me, so I need y'all to take all the stuff and go ahead. Go ahead. So he sent people in different sections, and he said, if he think I'm with y'all, then he gonna strike with y'all, and I'm not gonna be there, and then strike. But it was really a setup to get him by himself. He was set up to get him by himself. So he wrestled all night until daybreak. Let's go to the verse after that. I believe I was at 24. I was at 24 or 25. He wrestled all day till daybreak. Verse 25 says, when the man, let's go back to 24. Sorry if I was ahead of myself. So Jacob was left alone until daybreak. Okay, I was right. 25. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of his hip. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. So listen, I did good study. And I dug, because if you're like me, I asked questions. And I said, why? Okay, spoiler alert. We're going to come back and get it, but spoiler alert, okay? Just in case you have not heard this story before, what Jacob is doing is Jacob is really wrestling with God. He's not wrestling with the man. He's wrestling with God. And so my curiosity peaked, and I said, if this is God and Jacob is wrestling with him, it's God. This isn't even a wrestling match. Let's be honest. So when it says when the man, we're really talking about God. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, how could God not overpower Jacob? Like, let's ask this question. He touched the socket of Jacob's hip. The first thing the Lord told me, he says, is that's why I created free will. I'm never going to force you to do something that you don't want to do. So really the tension or the conundrum here was, it wasn't necessarily that he could not overpower him. It was that he would not overpower him. So then he touched the socket of his hip. Why did he touch the socket of his hip? And I said, okay, what's happening? He said, I needed to touch the socket of his hip because I needed to change his mobility. I said, okay. He said, I had to touch the socket of his hip because that is where he gets the most strength to be able to move forward or backward or move about. So me touching the socket of his hip caused the limp. So then the only way that Jacob could get to what he needed to get to was that he had to depend on God, because why? He had a limp. What am I saying? The reason why we've had to wrestle with so many things is because God was trying to break us down and break our mobility, because we were going in a place dependent on ourselves and not dependent on him. So he says, I had to touch the socket of his hip. And then he wrestled with the man. 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 He wrestled with the man all night long. He wrestled with him. He wrestled with all year long. He wrestled with him. All week long, he wrestled with him. And now the text says day, but if we're honest, most of us have been wrestling all year. Maybe for the last 3 to 5 years. We've been wrestling. We've been wrestling. We've been wrestling. And then next verse says he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go. I'm tired. It is daybreak. But Jacob replied, and I told you we're talking about he's wrestling with God. And I think Jacob had a revelation by this point. He says, I'm not letting you go until you bless me. The reason I've been wrestling all year, the reason I've been wrestling all week, the reason I've been wrestling all day is because I need something from you, and I'm not letting you go until I get what you promised me. I'm not letting you go until you bless me. Next verse. The man asked him, what is your name? I referenced it earlier. Jacob, the meaning of Jacob is heel grabber. And that came from, they were twins in the womb. Esau came out first, and Jacob grabbed the heel of Esau to come out as well. And I said, okay, God, it also means deceiver. It also means all of these other things. But I focused in on heel grabber. And I said, Lord, what are you trying to say through heel grabber? He says, glory. He says, what I'm trying to tell them is that as a heel grabber, that means you come second in command because somebody came out first. That means somebody or something was ahead of you. And then you've been spending, the reason why Jacob was a master deceiver is really because he's been trying to spend his whole life to catch up to what God promised him. And Jacob said, I wasn't fit necessarily to be second, and Esau was first. So I'm trying to do this thing to get what is my birthright, which was technically Esau's. But if you actually do deeper studying on the text, Jacob was really predestined to have his grandfather's level of blessing. His grandfather is Abraham. His father is Isaac. And we know, we sung the song in school, or you should have sung it if you didn't. It says, Father Abraham had many sons. What many sons have Father Abraham? I am one of them, and so are you. So let's what? Just praise the Lord, right? Abraham was a father of many nations. So the birthright was that you would get many nations, many sons, and many things. So Jacob was trying to understand the fact that I'm trying to get many things and many nations, but I was a heel grabber. Somehow, some way, I'm always showing up second. Somehow, some way, I'm always coming in second. And what the Lord revealed to me is that in the shifting of the seasons, you're getting ready to shift from 2 to 1. All right, we'll let that set because some of y'all didn't catch it. You're shifting from 2 to 1. You're shifting positions. So the thing or the things that you've been spending this last season trying to get and trying to work your way on your own control or your self-reliance or independence, God says, you've been trying to do it when I've been trying to do it, but you were wrestling with me. You've been wrestling with me. You've been wrestling with me. And so Jacob, at this point, he's tired. I've been deceiving. I might die. I'm on my way to go see my brother who I know I stole from him. And he probably going to kill me because I ain't saw him in however long. And he realized that I deceived him out of his birthright. So I need you to do something. And he says, I'm not letting go until you bless me. And what Jacob didn't realize, even if he realized that it was God he was wrestling with, what he didn't realize at that point, because I'll be honest, what he was asking for was the blessing to not die. He didn't know what was getting ready to happen next. Somebody say, what is a name? Look at somebody else. Say, what is a name? Or what's in a name? Okay, what's in a name? Name, by definition, is a word or a combination of words by which a person, place, or thing, a body or class, or any object of thought is designated, called, or known. A name is that by which a person, place, or thing is marked. Okay, if you were paying attention on Friday, Bishop in his prophetic forecast told us that we were what? Marked. That we were marked. In Scripture, names were generally descriptive of the person, of their position, of some circumstance affecting them, hope entertained concerning them, so that the name often came to stand for the person. I said, so that the name often came to stand for the person. And really, and I don't want to get myself in too much trouble here, but you can do your own study and realize there were really only a few names in the Bible that God changed their name. Okay, I'm going to say it again. There were really only a few persons in the Bible where God changed their name. God changed Abram's name to Abraham. God changed Sarai's name to Sarah. God changed Jacob's name to Israel. And God changed Simon's name to Peter. Through those names, God gave new beginnings, new hopes, and new blessings. I said through those name changes, God gave new beginnings, new hopes, and new blessings. And a name is a prayer. I said a name is a prayer. A name is a prayer. When God changed a person's name and gave them a new name, it was usually to establish a new identity. When God changed Abram's name, Abram meant high father. He changed it to Abraham, meaning the father of a multitude or the father of many nations. You can reference Genesis 17:5. At the same time, God changed Abraham's wife's name from Sarai, meaning my princess, to Sarah, meaning the mother of nations. Okay, you can reference Genesis 17:15. The name change, or this name change, took place when God gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision. Let's go to Genesis 17, and we're going to start reading at verse number 4. And I really need you guys to key in on this. Verse number 4. We can do an NIV version. As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you a father of what? Many nations. Next verse. I will make you very fruitful. I'm getting ready to bless you. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. Next verse. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. Next verse. The whole land of Canaan, which is the land of promise, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God. Now let's pause right here for a second. Let's go back. I want you guys to understand this. Canaan was the land of promise. Abraham was existing as a foreigner in a place of promise. So what God is saying here is, I'm going to give your promise to you as an everlasting possession. You're not just going to visit it. It's going to come fully in your possession. Okay, next verse. Then God said to Abraham, as for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you for the generations to come. Next verse. This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. Next verse. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you. Next verse. For the generations to come, every male among you who is, somebody say 8 days old must be circumcised, including those born in your household or bought with money from a foreigner, those who are now or not your offspring. Excuse me, next verse. Whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant. Next verse and last verse. Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Now, here's what I want to reference. And we're going to dance and shout in a minute for what God is saying. God's renewed covenant promise to Abraham following the initial contractual relationship, which was referenced in Genesis 15. This is the second occasion God again promised lands and offspring to Abram, who was still childless, okay, and gave him the sign of circumcision, which was to be imposed upon Abraham and his descendants as a token of covenant membership. While Abraham and his household were circumcised forthwith, the Lord's command required that hereafter male infants were to be circumcised on the 8th day of life. For the Jews, circumcision was more than a rite of passage. For them, it was a sign of their covenant with God. Circumcision marked them as the chosen people, God's special treasure. Others in their time practiced circumcision, particularly in Egypt, but it seems that only for Israel did it have the significance of marking a covenant relationship with their deity. In other words, here's where I wanted to get. There was a need, and I don't want to get too graphic, there was a need for a cutting away. I said, in other words, there was a need for a cutting away. And there was a cutting away happening on the 8th day. I told you, 2023, 7, 2024, 8. There was a cutting away happening on the 8th day. And so as we're wrestling, or we reference wrestling, what the Lord told me to tell you is that there was a need for a cutting away of some things before you transition into 24 because of what I'm getting ready to do. Because believe it or not, you're marked. I said, believe it or not, you're marked. And you might ask again, why does God choose to change names for some people, but not all people? The new name is a way to reveal the divine plan and also to assure them that God's plan would be fulfilled in them. Hear what I'm saying? I need you to personalize and take this personally. The new name is a way to reveal the divine plan and also to assure them that God's plan would be fulfilled in them. In other words, the new name is to reveal the divine plan and affirm the fulfillment of what's planned. What I'm trying to tell you is God is only revealing what he's about to release. I said, what I'm trying to tell you is that God is only revealing what he's about to release to you. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to Isaiah 62. We're going to read verses 1 through 5. Because there's something I need you to get, and then we're gonna rock. For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent. For Jerusalem's sake, I will not remain quiet till her vindication shines out like the dawn, her salvation like a blazing torch. Next verse. It says, the nations will see your vindication. Let me pause right there. The nations will see your vindication. All right, some of y'all still moving slow. The nations will see your vindication. What am I trying to tell you? You ain't going to have to vindicate yourself. And all kings, your glory, you will be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will bestow. Next verse. You will be a crown of splendor in the Lord's hand, a royal diadem in the heart of your God. Next verse, hand of your God, excuse me. No longer will they call you deserted. I said, no longer will they call you deserted. I said, no longer will they call you deserted or name your land desolate. That means no production. But you will be called. Y'all not responding in the right way. No longer will you lack production. God says, I'm getting ready to change your name. What? And then here's the B clause. For the Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married. The Lord will take delight in you, and your land will be married. Verse 5 in conclusion, it says, as a young man marries a young woman, so will your builder marry you. As a bridegroom rejoices over his bride, so will your God rejoice over you. What I'm trying to tell you is he's getting ready to put this stuff together. All right, rest to your feet. Rest to your feet. Y'all acting like this isn't the last day of the year. Go back to verse number 5. Go back to Isaiah 62, verse number 5. It says, as a young man marries a young woman, so will your builder, who is the Lord, marry you. What am I saying? God has a covenant. God has a covenant with you, and then he's going to rejoice over you. Your builder is him. What he's trying to tell you is, I'm getting ready to bestow a new name on you, and then I'm going to marry the two, and then I'm going to rejoice over what I've done for you. No longer will you be called desolate. I don't care. I told you a few weeks ago that God said the anointing of try again. I don't know what happened in the former season and what failed, what lacked, what didn't produce. God says, I'm naming you a new name, and your level of production is getting ready to change. God says, I'm naming you a new name, and your level of production is getting ready to change. Your level of access is getting ready to change. Your level of resources is getting ready to change. Y'all not praising like what I'm talking about. God is getting ready to change your production level. I don't care what you lost. I don't care what you had to go without. I don't care what failed. God says in this season, with this new name, there's another level of production that's getting ready to come. There's another level of access that's getting ready to come. There's another level of access that's getting ready to come. And I know Jacob means heel grabber, but he says no longer are you going to have to chase after anybody else's stuff. He said no longer are you going to have to chase after anybody else's stuff. I'm about to give you the blessing that is designed for you. I'm getting ready to give you the blessing that is predestined for you. Don't you try to covet nobody else's stuff. Take your hands off of somebody else's stuff. God is getting ready to give you exactly what's for you. Can you lift up your hand, open up your mouth, and bless God that he's getting ready to give you what's purpose for you? Come on. I said, can you lift up your hands, open up your mouth, and give God praise? That he's getting ready to give you what's purposed for you. He's getting ready to change your name. Look at somebody across the room, say, he's getting ready to change my name. He's getting ready to change my name. Y'all act like you ain't excited about it. I said, he's getting ready to change my name. If my name was lack, it's getting ready to be abundance. If my name was failure, it's getting ready to be success. If my name was not enough, it's getting ready to be more than enough. I said, eyes have not seen. I said, ears have not heard. I feel you, God. I said, eyes have not seen. I said, ears have not heard. I said, eyes have not seen. I said, ears have not heard. Neither has it entered into the heart of man
what God is getting ready to do, I need you to move out of your seat and go find 5 people and say, he's getting ready to do it. The reason why I had you go to 5 people is because 5 is the number of grace. And if we be honest, in 2023, the only reason that we're still here is because of God's grace. The only reason that we're still alive is because of his grace. I'm only here because of his grace. So you gotta owe him a grateful praise. I'm only here because of his grace. Y'all think I'm just talking, but I promise you, I hear the Holy Ghost in my left ear. I don't care what the name of your last season was, he's getting ready to change it. I hear from lack to abundance. I hear from no resource to resource. I hear from failure to success. I hear barren to production. Stay right there. All right, so listen. It's my job to give you the word, but it's also my job in this particular service to usher you to the place of praise of where you need to be. And truth be told, some of us are in here like we don't realize what 2023 was. Let's just keep it transparent. We in here real cute and real sedity like we almost didn't get taken out of here in 2023. Like you didn't really almost lose your mind in 2023. If there was any Sunday that I shouldn't have to pump and prime and pull you, it should be this Sunday. Because if the Lord say the same in about 12 hours and 24 minutes, we will be able to cross over the threshold of really the year the enemy tried to take us out. He tried to kill us in the face of the thing that he promised us. And what's those texts? It says, I'm gonna name this place Peniel. Why? Because I came face to face with God. I came face to face with God and I overcome. I'm still here. And here's the thing. Some of y'all saying, I came face to face with God. Isn't it funny that he came face to face with God in conflict? Oh, some of y'all not responding. Isn't it funny that he names the place Peniel, that he came face to face with God and overcome, but it was after he had to go through conflict. It was after he had to wrestle. The revelation is I still had to wrestle with you, and I might have gotten injured and I might have a limp, but I'm still here because I'm depending on you. All right. Now here's the place where you should really dance or lose your mind or whatever you're going to do. Jacob meant heel grabber, but Israel, which is what the name was changed to, means one who prevails with God. I said it means one who prevails with God. I'm gonna say it again. One who prevails with God. It does not say one who prevails over God. It's one who prevails with God. He changed his name because he wrestled with him and realized that he couldn't do this without him. Come here. He realized, just stand right here. He realized that he wrestled with him, face that way, that he wrestled with him, give me a rumble. He wrestled with him and he couldn't do it without him. So he walked into the wrestling match well able, but he walked out like this, leaning and depending on him. So that way, walk this way, that he couldn't do anything without his dependence. He couldn't do anything without his assistance. So what Israel means is one who prevails with God. So I might have a limp. 2023 might have thrown me some blows, but I'm prevailing because I'm with him.
I might be knocked out, but I'm prevailing because I'm with him. I might have been hitting my jaw, but I'm prevailing. Why? Because I'm with him. And as long as I got him, I've got what? I've got victory. I said, as long as I got him, I've got victory. So I came to tell you, God's getting ready to give you victory. The only reason you had to wrestle was to show you how much you got to depend on him and his will. But now that you're depending on him, he's getting ready to give you victory. Can we clap our hands, open up our mouth, and give God praise? Because we're prevailing with him. We're prevailing with him. Come on. Lift up your hands, open up your mouth. Murphy. Is she leaving? Are you leaving? Is she leaving? Can I just give you a word before you leave? Can you lift up your hands? I don't know what you've had to go through the last 5 to 7 years of your life, but I only know as the Lord shows me. He says it's been, excuse the verbiage, it's been somewhat of a doozy for the last 5 to 7 years. I don't know what you've lost. I don't know what you've had to come up against, but the Lord sent you in these doors on the last day of 20 and 23 that to tell you he's getting ready to give you a new beginning starting tomorrow. As a matter of fact, it actually started today because you needed to hear this word. I don't know what you've been wrestling with. I don't know what you've been battling with, but the Lord told me to tell you that he's getting ready to give you victory. And then he told me the prayers that you prayed, is this your son? The prayers that you prayed for your son, the Lord says he heard you the first time you prayed, and he's getting ready to visit you in the next 48 hours. I don't know what the issue is. I don't know what the situation is, but the Lord told me to tell you the prayer you prayed the first time, the prayer you prayed the first time. And I don't know what this sickness or spirit of sickness is. The Lord told me to tell you that healing is getting ready to come to you. Healing is getting ready to come to you and your family, and you had to be here this morning so that God could remind you that he heard your prayers. Can y'all give God praise for what God is doing for her? Can you give God praise? Come on. Clap your hands and give God praise. I'm trying to contain myself, y'all. But the Lord, we've had to struggle this year, but it always ends in victory. We've had to battle this year, but it always ends in victory. All we do what? Is win.
just lift up your hands and thank God for victory? Come on. As high as you can. You know the posture of somebody who wins a match. Lift up your hands, because the trick of the enemy was he thought he was going to keep your hands down. He thought you were going to go into 24 bent over. But this is a sign that I'm still here and I'm still winning. I said, this is a sign that I'm still here and I'm still winning. I'm prevailing. I've got the victory. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't call me by my former season. I need you to call me by my now season. Don't try to challenge me or attach me to what happened over the last 7 years. You gotta start fresh. And here's the thing, even with the name change, we're not discrediting the old, we're acknowledging it, but we're celebrating the new. It's out with the old and in with the new. It's a new season. I'm going from a heel grabber to a prevailer. I'm going from second place to first place. I'm going from the tail to the head. I'm going from the borrower to the lender. I'm going from the bottom to up top. Point at somebody and say, not only have I traded places, I've switched positions. I said, not only have I traded places, I've shifted positions. You thought I was bringing up the rear, but I'm getting ready to lead the charge. You thought I went from no money in my bank account. I'm getting ready to end up with 7 figures in my bank account. I went from an employee to a business owner. I moved from a renter to an owner. No longer am I funding somebody else's stuff. I'm getting ready to fund my own stuff. We might need to put this on a shirt. Say, I'm a trendsetter. I'm a trailblazer. I'm a trendsetter. I'm a history maker. Ain't nobody doing what I'm getting ready to do. Ain't nobody done what God's getting ready to allow to be done. I'm a trendsetter. I'm a trailblazer. I'm a history maker. I'm prevailing because I'm leaning on Him. And I really don't mean no any pun intended, but it's because I'm a person of purpose. That's the only reason I'm still alive. It's because I'm a person of purpose, and He's getting ready to allow the world to see what He purposed for me to do. He's getting ready to allow me to see, allow the world to see what He's purposed for me to do. That's why in Isaiah, He said, you ain't gonna have to vindicate yourself. I'm gonna vindicate you, because I'm naming you a new name.